Today, we are diving into one of the most dramatic, overwhelming, and honestly contradictory movements in all of history, the Crusades. For almost 200 years, Western Europe poured its heart, soul, and blood into a series of expeditions that promised a ticket to heaven, but often delivered, well, something else entirely.
And it all started with this single promise from the Pope. Just think about that for a second. It wasn't just a call to war, it was a promise of salvation, a guarantee of immediate, total forgiveness for your sins. I mean, what a powerful spiritual reward. It was enough to make people risk absolutely everything.
So what could possibly motivate literally thousands of people to march across the known world, right into hostile territory? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's this really complex mix of faith, grand strategy, and just pure desperation.
Now, if you look at the official call from Pope Urban II, the vision was huge. You had these big strategic goals, right? Defend your fellow Christians in the Byzantine Empire from the Seljuk Turks. Heal the big split, the schism between the Eastern and Western churches. And of course, the big one, take back the holy places in Palestine. For the knights and nobles of Europe, each of these was a really powerful reason to go.
But for the average person on the ground, the reality was way, way grimmer. Europe was suffering. Crop failures, disease, just a hard life. So this call to crusade, it was an escape hatch. And for some, it tapped into these wild, apocalyptic dreams about the end of the world. And what you got from that was this chaotic, popular movement, kind of like a disorganized mob led by guys like Peter the Hermit, who set out with way more religious zeal than actual strategy. It often ended in disaster.
Okay, so let's dig into the First Crusade, because it's really the only one that was, militarily successful. And it's a perfect case study for how these really high-minded ideals played out on the ground.
The journey itself was just an epic, brutal undertaking. The more organized armies met up at Constantinople and then started this 1,000-mile march through enemy lands. They managed to take the city of Nicaea, but the real test, the moment the whole thing almost completely fell apart, came at the ancient city of Antioch.
The siege of Antioch was an absolute nightmare. After they finally broke into the city, the Crusaders found themselves trapped. A massive Turkish relief army showed up and besieged them. They were starving, people were deserting left and right. I mean, all hope was pretty much gone.
And it really looked like that was it. After all these years of struggle, it seemed like this holy war was just going to starve into oblivion, right outside the walls of the city they had just captured. Pope Urban's grand vision was right on the brink of becoming a total failure. And then, something incredible happened. A soldier claimed he had a vision of where the Holy Lance, the spear that pierced Christ's side on the cross, was buried inside the city. So they start digging, and you're not going to believe it, they find a spear. Now, was it the real one? Honestly, it didn't even matter. Everyone saw it as a sign from God, and it just reignited their passion with this absolute divine conviction.
This renewed energy propelled them all the way to Jerusalem. But their victory, it was horrific. After they took the city, they unleashed a massacre. Now, the reports from back then might be a little exaggerated, but they paint this gruesome picture of the slaughter of defenders and civilians. It's this shocking brutality that just reveals the deep contradiction at the very heart of their mission, a holy war that ended in the most unholy violence imaginable.
After that initial, and I'm using air quotes here, success, the crusading spirit kept going for nearly 2 more centuries. But that first victory, it was never repeated. Instead, what you see is this repeating pattern of military failure and moral compromise. And you can really see the downward spiral right here in the outcomes. The Second Crusade, led by actual kings, was a total disaster. The third, that's the famous Crusade of Kings with Richard the Lionhearted, well, they took a key port city but still couldn't recapture Jerusalem. So why did they keep failing? It was a mix of political fighting among the Europeans and the fact that the Muslim states were becoming more unified and powerful. And then, then came the Fourth Crusade.
The Fourth Crusade is where things just go completely off the rails. It was the ultimate tragedy. Basically, because of some financial deals with Venice, the Crusaders got diverted, and they ended up attacking their fellow Christians in Constantinople, the very city they were originally supposed to protect. They sacked it, set up their own empire, and created this wound between the Eastern and Western churches that, you could argue, has never really healed.
But while this whole crusading project was collapsing in the East, a very different story was unfolding on the other side of Europe. Over in Spain, a parallel campaign, fueled by the exact same religious fervor, was achieving a much, much more permanent result.
Yeah, see, unlike the Holy Land, where the Crusader states were always just temporary outposts, the Christian kingdoms in Spain were energized by this same crusading spirit to slowly, bit by bit, reconquer the peninsula from Muslim rule. This struggle took centuries. They called it the Reconquista, and it was the one front where the military offensive of this era actually had a lasting permanent success.
So, after 200 years of conflict, what did it all add up to? What was the ultimate impact? The Holy Land was lost, Constantinople was alienated, but there's no question the world was changed forever.
I mean, just look at this. The contrast between the original goals and what actually happened is just night and day. The promise was to reunite the Christian churches. The reality was an even deeper split. The promise was to secure the Holy Land. In the end, it was lost for good. And far from defeating Muslim power, the Crusades actually helped unite different Muslim groups against a common enemy.
But the impact went so far beyond the battlefield. The popes who called the Crusades, their authority shot through the roof. You get these new, powerful military orders like the Templars. Christian religious practice actually shifted, with a new focus on the human life of Jesus and the holy places. And, pretty tragically, the whole idea of a crusade got turned inwards and was eventually used against heretics inside Europe itself.
And here's a fascinating, ironic twist. This violent conflict led to an intellectual renaissance in Europe. Through contact with the centers of learning in Muslim Spain and Sicily, Europe rediscovered the works of ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, which had been preserved and studied by Muslim and Jewish scholars. This flood of new knowledge didn't just spark a revolution, it laid the foundation for the rise of universities and completely shaped the continent for centuries to come. So that leaves us with this final thought. The deep-seated mistrust, the historical grievances, the powerful stories of holy war that were forged in the Crusades, they haven't just disappeared into the history books. They remain this powerful, often unseen force in our geopolitics, in our culture, and in religion, even today. It really makes you wonder, right? How do the echoes of these centuries-old conflicts still shape the world we live in now?